Okay, so I think we are right on the dot, so we can start. So we have a session on labor market issues, two. So there has been another one somewhere. So we have four presenters from the different countries. Four presenters, two offline, two online. Two are online. So I'm assuming they can hear us. And if you cannot, I don't know. Okay, can hear us, so we checked it. Perfect. So we have one discussant who will be talking about all four presentations. So difficult job. Glad that you've took up the challenge. So before without further ado, we can start with our four presenters. Hasibul Hassan, who's the professor of finance from the Department of Finance at Jawaharlal University. So.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, Zia.
Hi. Thank you, Atul Bhai, for introducing me, and also thanks the audience who are here to hear this presentation. After lunch, it's very difficult, I guess, for everyone after good lunch. So this is a project. I think everyone can hear me. This is a project funded by Jawaharlal University Research Center, and
sorry, has it just cancelled? Is someone keeping time? You. Sorry,
okay. Thank you very much. So in this project, me and my co-author working in this project, and we are actually partners. So today I am taking the responsibility of this paid work, or my job work, and my wife is actually handling the unpaid work back in our home. So it's very interesting for all of us. I actually told her to come, and she said, no, I don't want to present in front of the economics people. So she gave me the responsibility to present me. Sorry, it's not working. For some reason, it's not working. Oh, no, it's okay. So the context is very common, and we all know about this thing. Like, women's participation in labor force is increasing day by day, especially in the rural area. In rural area, in Bangladesh, women's participation in labor force in income generating activities is even larger than compared to the urban area. But however, most studies focus on labor participation rate. Fewer explore the subjective well-being and time poverty resulting from this intersection of paid and unpaid work. And as we all know, despite entering paid work, women still bear primary responsibility for the social production. That means unpaid work, right? So in this context, we start this project. We have three simple questions. We want to compare the time allocation between men and women in Bangladesh. Also, we want to assess not impact or correlation, we can say. It's not that causal study. The paid work on life satisfaction. And also we want to examine household chores effect on the life satisfaction of the employed individual. So we use a very simple theoretical framework, that is a feminist critique, also the time poverty issues, and the double burden. These three concepts we will be discussing in this paper. So if we want to check all these three concepts in a graphically, that's you can see there are two part of we segmented all our women sample in two categories. One is informal or formal employed. The other category is non-employed women, who are basically housemakers in our survey data. And we categorized further the paid work and unpaid work. So by engaging in paid work, financial autonomy increased, and also household bargaining power increased. These are the theoretically expected signs in the brackets, but there are some gender-wise gaps. And also in unpaid work, which gives like time poverty, role strain. So they are overburdened with their gender role and social expectations. And for the unpaid worker or non-employed women, they are like greater autonomy and leisure times, free times. They have socially expected gender role. Those may positively affect their satisfaction. Also, negative financial lack of financial autonomy or personal empowerment can be negatively affected their satisfaction with overall life. So we use very basic econometric model, so interaction model. So the simple interaction model, we have like 6 life satisfaction variable in the BIHS data. That is like 2000 IFRI collected this data set. We use the round 3 2018 2019. That means these are all pre-COVID data. So as the dependent variable, we use 6 life satisfaction variables. All are ordered categorical variable. There are 10 categories. So it was a self-reported life satisfaction variables. And by earning occupation, those who report all sample, those who report they have earning occupation, we put it 1, and all other categories are 0. And gender category and the interaction. Our main interest variable is the interaction term between working employment and this is left or 5 minutes left, right? Okay, thank you. So we run this model twice, one for the employment category multiplied by gender, and another is employment category or earning occupation multiplied by median chores. So there is a basic question may arise, why we haven't used ordered profit, why we use the regression OLS model. So there are 3 reasons. I'm not going very detail into those these logics. Let me skip now. If some question raised, I can discuss. So what is our findings? We have like 2 findings. The first finding is generally women report higher overall life satisfaction than men in the sample, right? However, women engaged in paid work are significantly less satisfied women who are not engaged in paid work. And so, sorry, here is the first point. So if you see this box plot, the left-hand side 6 bars are for the women, and the right-hand side 6 bars are for the men. So women always report they are very happy, despite they are taking burden of huge unpaid work or like household chores, but they report themselves happy. However, if we interact these earning occupation, paid work, and women gender dummy variable, we found that they are negatively their satisfaction level reduced. Their satisfaction is reduced in all 6 life satisfaction variables. Okay, so why these women are less satisfied when they are working outside, but also report their satisfaction level is high. Why this is so? So we have some conclusion based on the theory and what we think the double burden. First of all, double burden. They are overburdened with the work. That's why their coefficients are negative, right? So if we now classify the level of household work as a dummy variable, median dummy, that means above median is 1 and below median household work is 0. So we dummify the household work and again run this the same model I showed before. Then we see that people who work more than median, they actually less satisfied with their life. Median means like median household chores. Okay, and especially the interesting finding is that the men sample. If we segregate the sample in 2 categories, men and women, you can see men are very unhappy with their life, less satisfied with their life if they had to work more at household chores. Okay, that means when men take the responsibility of household chores in the rural Bangladesh, so they are very not happy. They are not happy, and they report their life satisfaction is very low. However, for the women sample, this is not the case. Even if women taking charge of huge work, but they haven't report specifically that we are not happy for these, or we are not happy with the distribution of work. So what can be the explanation of these? So if we think about the patriarchal bargaining, so you can see that. So uh, that when women, even if women take the responsibility of more household work, they maybe use it uh, as their bargaining power. Probably we always seems like, okay, even if I work outside, there will be no problem at the home. So why you are not giving me the permission to work outside? It's a common even in Bangla there is a quotation, "Je radhe se chulo batte jane," or something like that, right? So it may be work as the patriarchal bargaining. So no one is actually, probably women are not reporting their true attitude, or probably their true satisfaction. They're probably, yes, I'm happy with the household work distribution. I'm happy. This might be one of the reason. So therefore, reported life satisfaction may reflect women's adaptive response. It may not be the true response. It may be the adaptive response rather than measure of actual well-being. This is one of the limitations as well in our study. So, yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. So thanks all. We can talk later during our questions session. Thank you.
Thank you, Asim. I've been under very strict instructions.
No problem at all.
And
Even actually, it's the last slide. Yeah.
the session is taking place before the research director, so I have to. But this is a great presentation and really interesting insight into the data. I'm sure the discussion will have a lot to add in that as well. So let's start. So we move to our second presenter, Rafsan, who is from Center for Entrepreneurship Development, Sprague University. We actually work on the project together.
Yes, sir.
Rafsan, your 10 minutes starts as soon as we see the first slide.
Yeah, this one.
You should have a time
I
of
get a mic.
time over
Yeah. 0 minutes.
0.
Please make it full screen. Can I get this one?
Good.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon. I'm Mohammed Rafsan Al Abu Huraira. I'm from Center for Entrepreneurship Development at Breakout University. I'm working there over 2 years as a research assistant. So today my paper is about wage reform and workers' realities. So this paper examines how 2023 minimum wage revision whether actually improved the workers' livelihood. So while the wage increased nominally, our findings show a way more critical realities once we consider implementation gaps, rising expenditures, and working pressure and gender inequality. So why this study matters? This study matters because, as you see, Bangladesh's RMG sector has been central to its growth and development trajectory. So it heavily contributes to GDP, export growth, and most importantly, mass women participation in paid roles. So, but one precarious conditions that workers' condition or workers' welfare remain fragile and vulnerable. This is why the revised minimum 2023 wage revision was important to study, not as only policy change, but as a test whether the wage reform can really improve the workers' living standards. So Our research contribution was very simple. It was very simple but important. We moved from wage board and policy debates to workers' actual experiences. So we asked whether they received a revised wage and whether it improved their real or daily lives and whether it changed their working pressure and whether it changed the gender outcome. So for the conceptual framing of our study, our conceptual framework was partly based on the McCarthy's idea of who pays and who gains. The key idea was basically a wage rise does not automatically mean a welfare gain for workers. So employers adjust by, say, for example, fewer hiring. Okay, so is it okay now? Okay. So, okay, where was I? Okay. Employers may adjust by fewer hirings and automations, and workers may face social costs like rising daily expenditures, fewer welfare facilities, or stronger demand for male workers, thus eliminating the higher gain from the nominal rise. So this was our core logic guiding our whole analysis. In our study, we used mixed method design. So as you see in a quantitative part, we conducted a survey of 1,015 workers from non-EPZ factories in 5 clusters across the whole Bangladesh. And the survey gives us a very broad pattern, and whereas the qualitative part, say for example, the focus group discussions and the key informant interviews helped us to understand how workers themselves interpret the wage change in their everyday life. So this combination is especially useful when for especially capturing the working pressure, gender vulnerability, and stricter supervisions. So this is our finding one. The first finding suggests that the wage increase was substantial but incomplete. So as you see from the pie chart, the full increment received by the workers were 81.4, it's almost 82%. So the 4 out of 5 workers received the full raise, whereas 1 in 5 workers experienced the partial implementation or none at all. So the surprising part is from the qualitative part of the focus group discussions, we found that from the qualitative part of the focus group discussions, it reaffirmed that those gaps were more visible in the non-member and small factories. In our second finding, this is the heart of our paper. We found that income rose, but real gains were weak. Yes, nominally the income was higher, but when we see the basic expenditure, look at the basic expenditure, the house rent, groceries, health, education, clothing, all got a rise. So those sharp rows eventually absorb the much gain from the nominal increment. So from the qualitative insights, workers reportedly and repeatedly reported that even after the wage increase, they could not save anything. All their income goes to the education, clothing, and their house rent. So in finding 3, our third finding suggested that wage increment was not experienced as only a higher pay. To many workers, it was more working pressure. So managers often linked higher pay to higher expectation, more stricter supervisions, and threats. Workers reported in our focus group discussions that sometimes the managers or the supervisors are rude and harsh and threaten them by mentioning the topic of the raise. Also, there was a lot of working pressure. As you see, 65% of workers reported the working pressure was higher after the raise, So some of the workers reported the pressure to produce more since they are paying more is there. The fourth finding was the gender gap was not completely eliminated due to the race. So the women were still concentrated on the lower paid roles, just like operators and sewing. You see that they are dominating roles for the women, but their average income was almost 1,015 less than the male workers. Also, the focus group discussions from the workers suggested that the female workers are more vulnerable to the layoffs in small factories. And from key informal interviews from the small factory owners, they reported they have the pre-notions that male workers are more productive. So why not giving the rise to the more productive ones? So to conclude, my concluding point is that the 2023 reform did raise nominal wage, but it did not secure meaningful well-being gain for many workers. Future wage hikes risk repeating the same pattern unless wage governance improves and worker protection becomes stronger, especially against underpayments, against work intensification, and gender vulnerability. Thank you. I welcome your comments and questions.
Thank you, Roshan. Really interesting theater work the patterns. And also thank you for finishing the tutorial. Kudos to you. Next we move to two presenters who will be presenting online. So the first one is Amit Mitra, who is the Distinguished Associate. Hi, Amit. So I'm introducing you. He's at the National Council for Applied Economic Research. Where are you based at?
It's in New Delhi. New Delhi.
Okay. So you have 10 minutes. Unfortunately.
Okay. Can I share my screen? It would be really helpful.
You can and you should.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
The 10 minutes will start from as soon as the slides appear. Yes. Maybe
okay. Is it visible?
It is, but if you can go full screen, that would be great. The presentation.
Hi. Is it visible now?
Yes, you can start.
Okay. Thank you. So hi, my name is Amit Mitra. I work at the National Council of Applied Economic Research, New Delhi, India, and my paper is on the global value chain and the labor market transformation in India. So briefly speaking, what is the GVC integration? Like in a production process, you take the different part of the production process. There are several parts you can participate in the lower stage or the upper stage of the GVC. So that is basically the GVC. So you may export some raw materials and produce some part and maybe then export to some other countries as well. So that's how GVC works. So my paper deals with the GVC integration and how the hiring decisions of the firm matters due to this GVC. So this paper focuses mainly on these two things, the GVC and the labor market issues, mainly the labor market hiring. Now, GVC is affected by several things like the flexibility, the farm levels, preferences, or profit, or the productivity, and the trade issues there. During the labor hiring process, what matters is most the bargaining power, the wage, the regulatory frameworks in that country or in that firm or in that industry. So my paper tries to connect these two things. If you look at the union workers growth in India, it's falling. It's roughly falling. The workers union density, like the labor union, is falling. We have used the data from 2005 to 2021, and you can see a sharp fall in the labor market or workers union in Indian context. So here is my two research question. First, how does the GVC drive the contractualization of labor? Like there are two kinds of labor, the contract labor or the regular hired worker. So how does the GVC affects those decisions of any farm. And my second research question deals with how the farm productivity or size or the export orientation or maybe import penetration or some kinds of other industrial policies or disputes affect the hiring decisions. So there is a long theoretical framework, long mathematical derivation. I'm not showing here right now, but the core problem is there is a farm and there are laborers and they bargain. The laborers bargain for their wage, and farm has the objective like the profit maximization, subject to the capital, the cost, and all other things. And we used a Cobb-Douglas production function. And this is our first proposition. Like sorry. Okay. First proposition is when the firm's bargaining power fall below a certain level, then the firm goes for the regular worker rather than the contract workers. And the second proposition is like depends on the productivity. Productivity alters the hiring and firing decisions as well. For the data, we have used the annual survey of industries data, and we captured the 10-year period over the 18 major Indian states. And we have done the industry level analysis using the NIC 2-digit code, and we have included 22 manufacturing industries. And main key variables are the labor capital ratios, the GVC integration, import penetrations, that are the major variables are there. If you look at the GVC establishment, that is of course, in some years it's more or less higher, in some years more or less lower, and after pandemic it became a little bit lower as well. If you look at the GVC establishment in the farm, it's increasing over the time. And if you go by the industries, these are the coke and the petroleum, the furniture, that is our fabricated computer products that are mostly GVC integrated farms. So here is all the farms, 22 farms I have used in my studies. You can say the high GVC integration like the leather, the coke and the refined petroleum and the metals as well. Empirical methodology, we have used the fixed effect model here and run the FGLS model and we have log transformed our data. So our key finding is that if the GVC integration rises, the contract labor hiring is also rising. So that is a very general statement here. And if the labor capital ratio is increasing, then the contract labor share is also increasing, as well as the wage differential as well. Because if the wage differential is increasing, then the firm will tend to hire the contract labor rather than the regular employees. Then we have, that is just our basic model. Then we have using the states dummy and year dummy and industry dummy, we have found a similar kind of result as well. But the most interesting part is when we have disaggregated the data. Like we have disaggregated the farm in high and low GVC integration, and here you can find out the result. Productivity is the main factor here. Like for the high GVC integration farms, productivity affects the decisions most, and it is most importantly, the positively, like the productivity if increases in the higher integration GVC farm, they tend to hire more contract workers. Then we have disaggregated our data into the capital intensive and lower labor intensive GVC. If we found that the capital intensive GVCs tend to hire less contract workers. So that is one of the main findings in our result. Then we have disaggregated our states in pro-worker and pro-employee states, like where the bargaining power is less high, more higher, and left-wing political parties are there. More number of strikes are there, and strong union are there. Their GVC units and raw material affect most positively on the hiring process of the contract workers. Like in the pro-worker states, if higher GVC units are higher, then farm tends to hire more numbers of contract labor. And then we have went for the COVID-19 structural break. Like we have found there is a structural break in our data. And after COVID, the productivity effects fall very sharply. Like if the productivity falls, then the contract labor hiring falls after COVID. And the capital labor ratio is one of the important factors. If capital labor ratio, if farm goes for the more capital intensive technique, after COVID, they tends to hire more kinds of contract workers. So, and then at the last stage, we have went for the endogeneity test, like the production or the productivity could indirectly affect our independent and dependent variables. So we go for the Hofmann endogeneity test, and we found, and then we ran a 2 SLS regression using the lack of productivity. And here also we found the significant results that we have found in our base model and using the dummy models. So that is all about my paper, and it's mainly deals with how the input penetration and the GBC, like how the input penetration works in the GBC setup and how the capital setups works in our GBC setup. Our main contribution to the literature is one of the novel paper deals with the micro level data or the farm level data and institutional regulations we have integrated. The political part is the political movements we have integrated, and the union strength we have integrated. So that is one of our strength in this paper, and we didn't consider the skill composition or technological driven interruptions like the AI and some kinds of technology. We didn't consider that, but for future research we can of course consider these kinds of things as well. So that was all. Thank you.
We finishing very before time, so we'll have more time to look at the feedback. So we move to the last presenter, Ms. Divinity Satmini. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect. So if you can share your slides and you can start your presentation.
Can you see my screen?
It's coming up. So she is based at Institute of Policy Studies, Lanka. So please, you can go to full slides.
Okay. You can see, right?
Yes.
Okay. A very good afternoon to all of you. I'm Diniki Atulathmudali, and I'm from Sri Lanka. The study I will be presenting is titled "To Moonlight or Not: Gendered Insights into Multiple Job Holding in Sri Lanka." So moonlighting, which essentially talks about holding multiple jobs simultaneously, affects over 500,000 people in Sri Lanka. What caught my attention initially was that in Sri Lanka, the labor force participation for men stands at around 68%, while for women, it's at 31%. So we can see that it's almost half as that of men. But for moonlighting, 8% of employed men are engaged in moonlighting, whereas 4% of employed women are also engaged in moonlighting. So this gap is much narrower than you would expect. But for some women who are already underrepresented in the workforce, they are opting to work to take on additional jobs. So this is the question that led to my research. What shapes the decisions to moonlight in Sri Lanka, and how do these factors differ among men and women? So when looking at the previous literature, there are two theoretical explanations for this: the hours constraint view and the job portfolio motive. The hours constraint view talks about how people choose to moonlight because their primary employer does not offer enough hours. So this is essentially an economic necessity argument. Whereas job portfolio motive, on the other hand, talks about that, shows the fact that people choose a second job even when hours and income are sufficient because they want to diversify their skills and advance in their careers. And also, in feminist literature, it's brought the concepts of double burden and triple burden are brought forward, and my research tries to fill this gap of the lack of gender specific motivations and household characteristics in the Sri Lankan literature by using nationally representative data. My methodology has three phases: a descriptive analysis, an econometric analysis, and the sensitivity analysis to assess the robustness of the findings. And in the first phase, it looks at the characteristics of the sample and the nature of secondary job holding. And also, I have tested for the job portfolio motive-driven moonlighting with a cross-tabulation. And as for the econometric analysis, I have conducted a logic regression and then a sensitivity analysis. When we look at the findings, so before we get into that, the variables I have used were broken into 4 different categories: the primary job characteristics, demographic factors, household characteristics, and geographic factors. So moving on to the findings. When it comes to demographic factors, it was clear that tertiary education significantly increases moonlighting for men, but it has no significant effect for women. So this suggests that men leverage education to access better secondary opportunities, while women's moonlighting is not driven by their education level. And when talking about the marital status, married men are significantly more likely to moonlight, which is a classical breadwinner effect. And for women, being widowed is actually significant. It's a significant positive predictor, suggesting that widowed women face greater financial pressures to substitute for a lost income source. And also household factors, having more children under 15 increases moonlighting for men, but this reduces for women. Likely because childcare responsibilities becomes a binding time constraint for them. And however, being the household increases moonlighting for both genders, but the effect is proportionally higher for women because I think female-headed households in Sri Lanka are significantly more likely to be in poverty, and the existing literature supports this argument as well. Another interesting finding of the study is the access to digital devices. So access to digital devices actually helps men to access secondary employment, but this is not the case when it comes to women. So this shows signs of gender digital divide as well. When looking at primary job factors, higher wages and longer hours both reduce moonlighting for men and women. This is consistent with the hours constraint theory as well. Temporary or non-permanent employees reduce moonlighting probability for men, which suggests job insecurity doesn't free the employees. And finally, when it comes to the job portfolio motive analysis, it showed that most moonlighters take secondary jobs at or below their primary skill level. For high-skilled workers of skill level 4, there is a job portfolio motive behind their moonlighting decisions, because 60% of them engage in equally skilled secondary work, whereas for everyone else, the economic necessity is actually the motive behind moonlighting, and it is not a career strategy for them. So building on these findings, I have come up with a few policy implications. Firstly, the need for a national hourly minimum wage. So multiple job holding should create upward mobility, as I mentioned earlier. Therefore, financially driven moonlighting should be limited. In order to do so, as a way of quality improvement in the primary employment, a fair inflation-adjusted minimum wage policy is needed. And also, inclusive regionally targeted skill development programs are also crucial, because there were differences in the regional landscapes geographically in Sri Lanka when it comes to moonlighting prevalence. And finally, the gender gap in moonlighting opportunities need to direct attention when it comes to digital divide as well. Women are disadvantaged by digital access barriers, inflexible work arrangements, and also the absence of affordable childcare. So addressing these structural constraints are also crucial for creating an upward mobility in the labor market. So this brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, then. In case you cannot hear us, we are all clapping for your nice presentation. Another very interesting work. I think the first presentation and the last presentation have a lot of resonance among them, and also the second and third. So it's very nicely chosen for papers. So now we turn to our designated discussant, Mohammad Sadiqin, who is a professor at Maulana Bashari's Science and Technology University. So you're around 12 minutes, how much time? 15? Okay, but this.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. So very tough job in 15 minutes. All papers are very good and interesting. Thank you, Sir Chair, for giving me the opportunity. The first paper paid work, unpaid work, and life satisfaction in the context of Bangladesh. Very interesting study, though I have a few suggestions for improving. The paper makes a strong contribution by integrating paid work, unpaid work, and life satisfaction within a unified framework. But the novelty could be sharpened by more explicitly distinguishing it from existing Bangladesh focus study on time, poverty, and women's well-being. I think this issue the researcher can go through. The second one is they use the BIHS data, Bangladesh Integrated Household Survey before COVID-19 data, which is appropriate, nationally representative also, but the cross-sectional nature of the data limits causal interpretation, particularly regarding the relation between paid work and life satisfaction. I think the researcher should acknowledge more explicitly this limitation. Finally, in the findings, we see the employed women report lower life satisfaction despite higher overall satisfaction level is compared. The discussion could be strengthened by more clearly separating like selection effects versus structural concept, like who enters in the paid work and work. And my final observation, I think the researcher, the presenter has said, maybe due to time limitation, it couldn't explain the use of OLS over ordered profit. I think it could be more elaborated because the interpretation of the OLS is very same. So the policy implications are relevant, somewhat general, but the paper would benefit from more concrete policy recommendation, particularly regarding childcare provision, redistribution of unpaid work, and labor market flexibility role. From my side, I think the first paper, I think this point might the researcher to address for the improvement. The second paper, contemporary study, very contemporary reform and worker realities.
Run out of charges.
Implementation status and impact of the 2023 minimum wage on Bangladesh RMG workers. From my view, the objective of this paper is assessing the status and challenges of implementing the revised minimum wage among workers in non-EPZ RMG factories. I think the claim, the researcher should clarify sampling strategy and representativeness. The claim of fully random survey, I think very overstated. And systematic sampling may introduce selection bias. Also, limitation and how representatives were chosen should be mentioned in the paper. Second is more beyond descriptive analysis. We see the paper is heavily rely on different kinds of descriptive strategies, statistics. I think a regression or multivariate analysis could be helpful to this paper. Some language like causal language without a strong identification may be omitted, like statements suggested that wage increase. I think you should use lead or higher workload, rather outcome, this sort of words. And FGD and KIs complement and validate the survey findings, rather presenting them separately from deeper gender and structure analysis should be. The third paper, I think the presentation slide I got from Sanem, and the presentation he presented, the slide is the improved version. I think they are different. So most of my comments, I think he addressed, like the use of FGLS, the potential endogeneity concern. So I think the the presenter should revise some language, like instead of shapes, I can use the in associate with, unless a causal framework is established. And the link between theory and empirical, like the simplified bargaining model, how empirically satisfy or for the policymakers should be more addressed. And then this final one, the very interesting paper, to moonlit or not, gender insights from into multiple job building in Sri Lanka. The study attempts to investigate the moonlighting behavior in Sri Lanka with special attention to the gender-based differences. I have a few comments like the use of job portfolio motive, JPM. I think explaining how it is constructed from the LFS data and how it differs from necessity-driven moonlighting is not clearly mentioned or explained. And potential endogeneity and selection bias should take more care, like moonlighting decision may jointly determine with income, occupation, hours of work, consider discussing endogeneity concern or applying robustness strategy to the basic logic. Since the analysis is based on the single year, LFS, I think 2023, causal interpretation should be avoided and clearly frame finding as a situation with acknowledged limitation. And gender difference, they are well, in the presentation we see that while gender differences are highlighted, the paper should more explicitly link findings to labor market theories like gender rules, time constraint, or bargaining power. And finally, from my side, the presenter should briefly clarify what type of sensitivity tests were conducted, how they supported the robustness of the main result. These all are from my side. I think I'm within the.
Oh, you're way good time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. We're really spending a lot of time here today. So we have how much time do we have for discussion? 40 minutes. I don't think we're going to be able to make this. But this may also give us some time for the presenters to respond at some point. So please, I hope you have kept notes of the comments that you have received from our designated discussant. But why don't we start with some question from the audience? Do we have another mic? Does it work? I mean, question, please. Oh, yes, please do. But I hope the mic works.
Yeah, it works. Hi, I'm Farhan Khan. I'm working as a senior research associate at Sanem. I have a very maybe silly question to Dr. Hasib. You have said that you have used the OLS rather than the order profit. Could you elaborate that? I mean, why and how it works, whether the residual actually behaves the way it should be? Thank you.
Anybody else?
Question. Thank you. Is it audible or? Okay, good. So I have two questions. One for is Mr. Rafsan for you. Is that I think Nazar Sadiq Bhai, he already mentioned about this one, but particularly you talked about the gender wage gap in your paper. So when you talk about gender wage gap, in particularly from the economics perspective, we actually want to decompose that. Like, there are many decomposition methods available. So like the Kaidaohaka decomposition, Mashadamata, or in many other quantum decompositions. So rather than, looking at because when you talk about the gender wage gap, it's not the gap between male wage and female wage. So you have to account for what comes from the endowment effect and what comes from the coefficient effect. We're basically controlling for their education and everything, and just what is the gender switch contribution in the wage. So that's one suggestion to you. Since you have a very good data set on our R&D sector, So maybe it will be helpful for you if you adopt any kind of those methodologies.
Further decomposition, I guess.
Yeah, decomposition, and then the another aspect I had, I think Nazul bhai already asked this question, like how you did the sample selection, whether you had any stratification or how did you?
Yeah, we had a stratified sampling strategy, but due to the limitations of time and
That's
site
absolutely very
constraints.
good. I mean, that's absolutely fine. Then my suggestion would be like, when you report the data, maybe use it. I'm okay. Okay, I can talk louder. Okay, I think that's better in a small room. So,
But I think because
okay.
you're not loud enough to reach your voice to Sri Lanka, so
Okay, that's fine then. So the reason I'm asking is that it will be better if you use your sample weights.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
So my suggestion to my question is to the online. Again, it's okay. My question is to our honorable presenter from IPS. So my question is to you, as particularly it's so I believe you there is sample selection bias in your data. So I mean you're looking at the workers who are moonlighting, right? I mean so maybe you have to correct for sample selection bias before moving on to the your analysis. So maybe any reflection, how you control it, or how do you see to control it in future? So thank you so much.
good. Since we have time, let's do so. I'm supposed to come the last, and then if I have question, the presenters will not be able to ask. So the way let me do it, I also weigh in and get some question, observation, maybe even suggestion, and then we'll allow the presenters to give their comments, their replies. I think, and if then there are further questions, maybe we can have a conversation. So I think all four papers are quite great, and I repeat that the choice of paper, the way they were chosen for this session, actually, either we got lucky or there's a deliberate decision that were made by the organizers. But in any case, I found it very well blessed. For the first speaker, Hasib, I think it's very interesting study. One question comes in, given the structural impediments women face, I think we can stratify women who are working or participating in labor force into two groups. So for one group, the working, participating in the labor market is not a binding constraint. And that's probably everybody in this room. No matter what, I think you would probably work in a place where it's an active choice in some sense. But given many women who face mobility constraint, they're kind of working only when it's needed, in some sense. So there's a strong self-selection going on, and maybe those are the those individuals are overrepresented in BHS data set. Point I'm trying to make: if I am already very stressed and I'm the one who is going to work in the outside for work, so I'm stressed too. So it's not the stress is causing me to work, it's certain other factors which making me stressed and forcing me to work. Whether that's the case, you can test it in your data by looking into like whether women who are working and women who are not working, how different they are. And that may give us a little bit more structure. One point that you actually mentioned is this, which you said adaptive expectation. I interpreted that as a reference, right? So for example, I am so much, I'm accepting my fate, so I'm reluctant to say that I'm stressed, right? So if I have a very different reference point, even if I'm saying that I'm satisfied with what I have, from an outsider, I'll think that the situation is not very well suited for that person. So again, the point I'm trying to make, folks who are saying they're satisfied with their life, objectively speaking, may not have a very good life that they're living. How do we solve that? I don't know. Maybe so. One point when you say life satisfaction, I think it would be nice to see what question that they were asked. Probably share some of stuff. For the minimum wage, I think it's a very interesting question, and there's a glass half full side of the story that 80% at least say that their wages were adjusted fully. I don't know, how did you tease that out from your data set? Like what kind of question that you asked them? So that would be interesting. Self-reported data, right? You did not see the wages, like you didn't have access to the HR data.
Yes,
right? So those are the all three of the three presenters, except for Hasib, you guys ended your presentation before time, so you had at least a minute to talk about your data set, which you did not. So I think this is a question, suggestion I would have for all three of you. Right? And I think a lot of people here are kind of wondering about that. Another thing you mentioned about the mixed method, and I'm not a mixed method researcher, but I worked with a few who were like had super finicky about those things. So whenever you say mixed method, you really have to say how those two methods fit each other. And there are steps like, did you collect the quantitative data first, then you use qualitative data to confirm that, or the vice versa, that you use qualitative data, then you use quantitative data to explore that. I think unless you mention how exactly the data collection was structured, I think you're doing a little disservice to yourself. I mean, this is fantastic, but mixed method research is actually more difficult. You're also maybe, I know it will probably come out a little less diplomatic, but I think you're leaving a lot of money on the table in terms of analysis. There are grades. So even if they're minimum wage, it is probably differentially bound for different types of people. So for example, higher grade, and that question will come for the next speaker as well. Higher grade workers probably have more bargaining power. So maybe they're probably, when you say it's fully complying, for whom? That's the question. Is it men, higher grade workers? If you have those data, you can probably quantitatively explore that more. For Amit, I think it's fantastic. My main disappointment, if I may say, was about you said you had a model, and we don't hear that word often. And it would be really nice to see your model. And I'm not saying that I really want to see your model like the whole structure, but one thing I would kind of suggest that when you explain your data, I think it needs to be structured or needs to be framed within that model. For example, when you say GVC participation has certain implication for your data, and you say that your data had a bargaining model, so the first question would be how GVC change a firm's bargaining power or threat point that will explain the labor market outcome that you explore in your data, right? So I think it would be really nice to link your data analysis, and even if it's not fully structural model, but even if you have some sort of reduced form analysis, but it would be really nice to see it put in the context what your model is suggesting. You use COVID-19. So I think it would be really nice if you were here. We could have this discussion over a cup of tea. But I think when you say COVID-19, again, how that changes the relative bargaining power between the employee, the worker, and the farm, right? I think it would be really, I think it's a missed opportunity for us to kind of think through that model and make sense of the data that you analyze. It would be really nice to see or hear from you. Maybe you can tell us during your reply, like what data that you use. You say one contribution, major contribution is using microdata. So it would be really cool to kind of hear from you how great your data is. I mean, we always brag about interesting data set that we use. So why not take the opportunity to kind of tell us a little bit more about your data? For Dinity, I think maybe that's it was instruction from Sanem's side not to talk about the data set. So that's why I said, like, how come all four of you so nicely coordinated not to talk about your data? There must be something, some latent variable which we have not privy to. For Dinity, I think, again, very interesting question, moonlighting. In the rural area, we see that people are moonlighting more. One interpretation that in the rural area, people are probably specializing less. So that's why moonlighting, one interpretation that people are doing multiple jobs. So choose two observation or suggestion. One, it would be really nice to hear from you what you mean by moonlighting, what kind of job, multiple jobs people hold. So I work at I'm now on leave, but I work at a public university and I'm looking at son and research director. So like being a assistant professor at Dhaka University, not like being a PhD student and being a research director, is he moonlighting or is he diversifying by very similar type of job, right? So it's very easy to do this kind of thing because these are basically doing almost the same thing in some sense. So probably that's not the case in rural Slough. So it would be really nice to kind of get a sense of the context. The last thing is you mentioned the positive and negative, but you did not mention the magnitude. I would really like, is it larger for men versus women? Is education has a larger impact compared to, sorry, I don't have that slide before me, but I think comparing like which factors actually has a larger impact. I think it would be really kind of those two markets would be really interesting. So one advice I may have for you, and when I say you, it's not only you, plural you, is it would be interesting and not interesting. I think it's important for us to see the magnitude of the association, even if it is not a causal impact, which the designated discussion multiple times mentioned, but sometimes even patterns without causal interpretation can be very, very, very useful. So we have a solid 25 minutes. Maybe we can close a little ahead, but I would really like to give opportunity to the presenters, the paper presenters. Maybe we can start from reverse order. So we start with Dinity. You go first, and then we go to Amit, then Rafsan, and we finish with Hasan. So Dinity, the floor is yours.
Yes, I'm audible, right?
Yes.
Yes. So from what I understood, the major concerns were about the selection bias, job portfolio motive, and I think the rural job distribution, right? So when it comes to selection bias, so before like doing the research, when I was referring to previous literature, with this study was to focus specifically on the determinants for moonlighting among employed individuals. So like the sample restriction was intentional. But then again, I understand the selection bias concern as well. So I hope to continue this study with hopefully a Heckman selection model or a bivariate probability model in the future. So, but still the baseline specification actually focuses on the employed sample. And let me quickly share something. Yeah. Yes, so this is how I conducted the job portfolio motive assessment with a cross tabulation. One of you mentioned about what kind of jobs these people are employed in. So these are the classifications made by the ILO. Skill level 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 is the highest skill level. And so based on this, what we see is skill level 4. So like you said, for example, a professor at a university doing a consultancy project. Now that falls to skill level 4. I think I mentioned in the presentation earlier that 60% of employees in the skill level 4 actually engage in the same skill level as their secondary employment as well. But this is not the case when it comes to skill level below that. They go to lower skill levels, specifically in the agricultural sector, which is why moonlighting is also higher in rural areas, because agriculture is primary occupation and they often go for multiple jobs. And which is why in the sensitivity analysis, I have excluded the agricultural sector in one part to see if it is sort of biasing the results. And then the second part of the sensitivity analysis is where I removed the geographical variables. The reason being there was a concern with the provinces, like the different geographical regions having different labor market structures affecting the results. So as a result, I had to I sort of removed them and ran another model just to see if that impacts the findings, but they do not alter the findings significantly. So that's how I came to the conclusion that the previous findings were actually robust. Have I answered all the questions? I'm sorry, that's all I have noted down as questions.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. Let's move at the skill structure of primary and secondary. I think that's very interesting. So Amit, why don't we move to you? It can take about 2 to 3 minutes.
Yeah, hi. Actually, I was supposed to be there. I booked my flight ticket and all, and the conference was supposed to happen in January, and then it delayed. Now I have some work at my workplace and a little bit busy. But anyways, lovely presentation. All the 4 presentation was very nice, and thanks to the Sanem to giving me this opportunity. Your all the points was very helpful. The first point you mentioned about the theoretical model and all, it is a very long mathematical derivation of 4 pages and all, but the basic idea is there is one farm, he has to maximize, or the farm has to maximize the profit, that is his profit maximization, and there are workers as well, and the workers have, I mentioned the bargaining power. What is that bargaining power means? In the literature, we have found that in most of the literatures, they have measured the bargaining power as the inverse of the worker union density. So that is one. We have measured the bargaining power, and that is one of your question. And how we derive our theoretical model and the empirical one. So we have assumed that in the production process, we have some domestic goods and some imported goods. So we have calculated the import elasticity is there and the farm is participating in GPC, and how the hiring and firing decisions depends on that production or the profit maximization. And there are two kinds of worker, regular workers and contract workers. And we have two propositions, like we have calculated two threshold point. First of all, the threshold point on the productivity side. If the productivity falls under certain critical points, then the firms intend to go for more contract labor hiring. So that is one. And another point is on bargaining power. If the bargaining power falls below a certain point, then the firm would go for hiring the regular workers. So that is my theoretical and empirical model linked, and it is a big model, so I couldn't show in the slide. Regarding the empirical part, there were 8 or 9 huge tables, so I didn't put in my data as well. But you mentioned about the COVID. Of course, we didn't have the primary intention to check the COVID effect, but our data, we collected the data from 2014 to 2023. So of course, COVID was there, and there are some kinds of effects. So we ran a structural breakpoint test, like the QA test mentioned by the Andrews 1993, which pointed out that in 2020 there are structural breaks. So we treated our data there. Regarding the states, like the pro-employer and the pro-worker state, we have measured an index by the OECD measures of the union strength, and there is Beasley-Burgess index, which basically deals on the bargaining power issues. And we have calculated two more things, like the lockout strike ratio. So lockout strike ratio is that can reveal how strength the union is in that kind of states. And for the country like India, the big political spectrum, like the right-wing parties, left-wing parties, different ideology and all. And we have calculated the seat shares of the left-wing parties and the right-wing parties and the central parties. And of course, in left-wing parties, we have the stronger labor union, like the states like West Bengal, where communist government was in power for 34 years, or in the Kerala, still communist government is in power. And we have states like Gujarat, where the extreme right-wing parties are in power, and Uttar Pradesh or Delhi or some kinds of things. And these all the states are huge industrial states and participate in GBC. So we found another interesting result, and we segregated or disaggregated all the states in two parts: pro-employer and pro-worker. So that is one interesting point in my studies. And another one was like we have disaggregated based on the GBC integration, like high GBC integration and low GBC integration, based on which part of the GBC you are participating. Like, is it the lower part or the higher part as well? So that was all for my endogeneity checks and all. And we have found the endogeneity and uses the 2SLS model as well. But due to the time constant, like 10 minutes is too less to describe all of those. So I pointed out the key results and findings. So thank you.
Thank you. So
That's all.
Thank you so much, sir. Can I have the mic? Hello. Thank you so much for the wonderful insight. Thank you, especially Bhaiya, and our honorable discussants and our chair, sir. Basically, our study was based on a project we conducted, a funded project of Ethical Trading Initiative in 2024. So as a part of that, we had two survey, one worker survey and one was the factory survey. So we did a 400 factory survey and 1,015 worker survey. So firstly, as a part of answering the Atanu sir's question, we conducted the quantitative survey first, and then to bolster the findings and to confirm those findings, we had to run a qualitative focus group discussions and key informant interview studies. So one thing that arose as a concern that we have less opportunity to know the grades from workers, because when they reported their grades, those did not match with the grades reported from government gadgets or the BGM and BKMA websites or their documents. So, but also during our factory survey, the factory respondents also reported almost similar data regarding the implementation of the wage. And we almost get similar classification of factories not complying with the wage, both from worker and the factory survey. And also the answering the question about the sampling strategy. The sampling strategy was stratified sampling strategy. We have number of total workers and filter option in from our map called Mapped in Bangladesh. So taking 95% of confidence interval and the 10% of attrition rate, we determined the sample strategy sample size to be 1,015 workers from solely from non-EPZ factories. And keeping in mind the both decomposition of wages and endowments. I think this is a very good insight to develop to improvise more on our designated papers. Thank you, everyone.
Last question after this, has it?
Yeah. Thank you very much. At least three questions. So by one and by one. So let's do one by one. So we use actually VIHS, which is collected by FP, and it is very popular data set. So many papers are related based on this data set. And we use only round three, which conducted on 2018-19. So the first question, or the most immediate question, which is like OLS, why we use OLS model? So in the paper, in the appendix or in the robustness check, the local COVID model is also here. I haven't presented here, and I haven't write the description based on the order profit as well. The main reason is that so we use the interaction term model. So that means like in the regression, besides control variables, we keep earning occupation as a one variable. The second term is the gender. The third term is multiplication of these both earning occupation and the gender one variable. So this is a product term. So in order profit or any profit or logic model, product term cannot be explained directly because there is no compatible group. Product term means like women who are working, right? So to whom we will like compare, right? So there are three leftover group, like women who are not working, men who are working, men who are not working. So the explanation becomes a bit hard. The second point is our dependent variable is 10 category order profit model. So if we run the margin after the order profit model or profit model, the margins will come or like 8 categories, like 8 margins. So and this is a subjective question. So the main question was like, can you rate me? Can you rate out of 1 to 10 how happy you are? So if you like this is a part of a OET, like Women Empowerment in Agriculture Index. It's a very huge index where the time use variables are there, and this index is very popular and also developed by IFPRI. So in that index, there are 6 questions. So please rate how satisfied with your overall life. Then then another question is like how satisfied with your household distribution, household chores distribution. There are 6 categories. So like if we run the margin after the order profit, so comparing between 7 and 8 or 6 and 8 is it may get more complicated, right? And the third point is like the marginal effect that I said, and having 10 categories in a variable, it is not continuous, but like not less continuous as well, because nowadays we use lots of indexes, which is like only several categories. So that's why we put those models in the appendix, but we don't want to stress in the main paper. And like we are not, I'm not sure whether our model is best, because still we are fighting with the reviewers. So let's see how reviewer books. So if reviewer wins, then probably we will switch to different models and different methods. But so far, this is the status. Let's see. And obviously, it's not at all an impact study. It's not at all an impact study. There are lots and lots of questions written in the self-selection and the other. There are many questions you can use and you can also criticize.
So it's actually a paper that's written from a feminist approach, very much feminist approach paper, and like we try to show some evidence, large scale, like a representative sample, evidence from representative sample of some established feminist theories. That was our main goal. That's why we always try to write the paper in a way, it's a some kind of like correlations or something like that. So no causal analysis or no causal descriptions are there. We try to establish some of the very much established theories with a representative sample only for the rural household women's. Because his working status in rural household, it's kind of like neglected. It's when we think about the working women, it's most of the urban population many of the times they are targeted. So we try to work the invisible level, like the off-farm activities, household, they work a lot at the agricultural production. We try to bring those issues using a national preparedness sample. That was our main goal. And the suggestions given by the moderator and also the discussant, obviously we will consider those and we will try to incorporate as much as possible. Thank you very much. Thank you. So round of hands for the discussion. I think we can bring this session to a close. Who shall I hand it over to now? And online presenter, thank you so much. We wish you could be here.
Thank you.
Certificate. What will happen to?
We'll send it.
Interesting. So don't worry, you'll get your certificate. Digital or
Digital. Or PDF questions.
or you can send them
We'll see, sir. I'm not
like
decided.
physical ones as well.
Yeah, if they want.
If they want.
Okay, one of my office colleague is presenting there in Sanem Rakhi.
We can send
There you
it.
go. You have a courier. So thank you so much.
Maybe you can hand over to him. His name is Rakti Mababos.
Okay, we'll do that. Sir, আপনার সামনে আসলে আমরা এটা
Thank you very much. Nothing with this one. Yeah. Oh. Your platform, sir.
So our online class is missing the group photo, so.
We can stand before the screen.
আমাকে সাইকেল ছবি